People seem to be liking the new Percy Jackson series, which must be a relief to author Rick Riordan, who famously hated the 2010 film adaptations. Here are some other authors who absolutely despised the adaptations of their work. Mary Poppins author P.L. Travers reportedly didn't like the film's animation sequences and how Walt Disney portrayed her main character. She allegedly wept through the entire premiere. Stephen King hated Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining, calling it a big, beautiful Cadillac with no engine inside. He eventually wrote and oversaw his own adaptation of it, a 1997 TV miniseries starring Steven Weber. And that's not the only writer Kubrick has ticked off. A Clockwork Orange author, Anthony Burgess, was annoyed the film didn't include the book's final chapter. And when he went to write the stage play based on the book, he made sure to include a man bearded like Stanley Kubrick getting kicked off the stage. Roald Dahl thought Gene Wilder was miscast as Willy Wonka. He's dead wrong about that. Truman Capote also despised the makers of Breakfast at Tiffany's for casting Audrey Hepburn. He thought that Marilyn Monroe was the only person that could play Holly Golightly. E.B. White called the animated version of Charlotte's Web a travesty. Mikhail Enda hated the Neverending Story adaptation so much, he requested his name be pulled from the credits. And then, of course, there's Alan Moore, who hates just about everything Hollywood has done with his graphic novels. He apparently only sold the film rights to them under the assumption that they would never get made. How to Train Your Dragon author Cressida Cowell loved that the DreamWorks movie added a prominent female character. Her books wouldn't have young women leads until later installments. Stephen King wishes he had come up with the Miss movie ending. His novella has a happier ending than the film, but he loved how the movie subverted Hollywood endings. Chuck Palahniuk once said he was sort of embarrassed by the Fight Club novel after the movie streamlined the plot and made it more effective. He also praised the movie for making thematic connections he had never thought of. George R.R. Martin said he likes how the Game of Thrones TV show depicted the character of Shay over his portrayal of her in the books, saying she's more complex on TV. Suzanne Collins didn't give Effie Trinket a lot to do in the final Hunger Games book, but because she loved Elizabeth Banks' depiction of the character so much, she personally asked director Francis Lawrence to expand the character's role in the Mockingjay films. This is why Effie goes to District 13 with Katniss in the movies. Lauren Weisberger, the author of The Devil Wears Prada, loved that Miranda Priestley was more three-dimensional and less purely evil in the movie as compared to her book. Christopher Paolini wasn't a huge fan of the Aragon movie and how it departed from his vision. He allegedly agreed that one line of dialogue from the movie was among the stupidest quotes in film history. And in 2021, he asked fans to urge Disney for a proper adaptation. Ernest Hemingway hated the 1958 adaptation of The Old Man and the Sea so much that he walked out of the movie and asked his friend and biographer A.E. Hotchner to write a better stage adaptation instead. It took him 61 years, but Hotchner finally finished the play in 2019 at the age of 101. The original I Know What You Did Last Summer novel was not a teen slasher, and the decision to make it one on screen appalled author Lois Duncan because she lost her own 18-year-old daughter to an unsolved murder. Her exact quote is, "As the mother of a murdered child, I don't find violent death something to squeal and giggle about." The Catcher in the Rye has never been adapted into a major motion picture because J.D. Salinger felt so betrayed by My Foolish Heart, the critically reviled adaptation of his short story, Uncle Wiggily in Connecticut. Every time Hollywood called him after that, he just didn't pick up the phone. Earthsea author Ursula K. Le Guin blasted the sci-fi miniseries based on her books for whitewashing the black and brown characters. She said the race of her characters was a deliberate decision in the novels. "I don't see why everybody in science fiction had to be a honky named Bob or Joe or Bill," Le Guin said. And she didn't love the Studio Ghibli adaptation either, thinking it was too violent and had an entirely different story. Anne Rice told her fans to forget about the Queen of the Damned adaptation, which she said mutilated her book. And in one of the best examples of an author disliking the adaptation of his book, Tom Clancy spent the entire DVD commentary for The Sum of All Fears shit-talking the movie, with the director sitting right next to him. He calls parts of the movie bullshit multiple times, like when a character gets radiation poisoning from coming into contact with nuclear bomb parts. Clancy says, "This is bullshit, by the way, unless he was one of the machinists, which is how I do it in the book. You can't get sick from looking at a sphere of plutonium." Amazing. Harper Lee reportedly loved Gregory Peck's depiction of Atticus Finch so much, she gave him her father's pocket watch as a gift. 101 Dalmatians author Dodie Smith really liked the Disney film, especially how it depicted Pongo. Gary Wolfe loved the film version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit so much, he wrote a direct sequel novel to the movie, and in it, retconned his original novel to have just been a dream. Philip K. Dick got to see a cut of Blade Runner before he passed, and liked it so much he asked to watch it again. Robert Bloch had major praise for Hitchcock's adaptation of Psycho, saying that aging Norman Bates down, quote, made his Oedipus complex much more believable. The Hidden Figures movie changed Margot Lee Shetterly's book quite a bit, but because Katherine Johnson and her family loved the film, So did the author. Kevin Kwan loved how the Crazy Rich Asians movie turned out. As he should, he sold the rights for $1 to ensure that it would have an all-Asian cast. Stephen King has been on record saying that Stand By Me is one of his favorite film adaptations. He reportedly gave director Rob Reiner a big hug after the screening. Silence of the Lambs author Thomas Harris vowed to never watch the 1991 film adaptation of his book because he didn't like how Michael Mann's Red Dragon movie Manhunter had turned out. But then one night, Harris accidentally caught lambs on cable and loved it. Tennessee Williams despised how the 1958 Cat on a Hot Tin Roof movie removed the play's gay themes. He reportedly told people waiting in line to see it, "This will set the industry back 50 years. Go home." Stephen King hated the movie adaptation of The Lawnmower Man so much, he sued to get his name off the title, claiming it barely resembled his story, and he won that lawsuit. Hollywood adapted Richard Matheson's I Am Legend 3 times, and Matheson hated all 3 movies, saying, "I don't know why Hollywood is fascinated by my book when they never care to film it as I wrote it." Jodi Picoult says she was literally kicked off the set of My Sister's Keeper because she objected to director Nick Cassavetes' new ending. Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama hated the American live-action adaptation Dragon Ball Evolution so much, he decided to return to the series and start writing Dragon Ball again. And have you ever wondered why there hasn't been another live-action Dr. Seuss adaptation after 2003's Cat in the Hat? Well, it turns out Seuss's widow, Audrey Stone Geisel, hated the Mike Myers movie so much, she banned Hollywood from doing any more live-action adaptations of his work.